Michael Knowles was recently, he had a sort of debate / argument with a pro-Palestinian, very nonsensical leftist, and definitely worth checking out. I'm going to play the full clip, and then I'll give you my reaction at the end.
Hello. Thank you for coming, Michael. So conservatives are against the ideology of political correctness and social justice, which is the ideology that says that white people should hate their culture and that Asians and whites should be treated worse than blacks and Hispanics. So that same ideology said it was okay for Zionists to throw Palestinians off their homeland and deny Palestinians the right to live in their homeland.
I don't know if it was the same ideology. It was the ideology of Zionism, is what you're saying.
It's which is different. That's the reason why that's the reason why the whole world supported it. And they condemned apartheid South Africa because it was white people doing it, but they don't condemn it when it's Jews doing it because they're considered more oppressed.
Everybody condemns Israel. What are you talking about? We're like the only country in the world that doesn't condemn Israel.
We give them more money than any other country in the world.
We do, but I'm saying
yes, and
most countries, including in the West,
other countries do too. But we sanction apartheid South Africa because it's white people doing it.
The Jews are pretty white. I mean, some of them are a little dusky, but some are pretty white. So, what is your question? Are you saying that Zionism is the same thing as political correctness?
Yes, I believe that conservatives shouldn't support Israel because it's the same ideology.
I'm trying to figure out what your question is.
Because it's the same ideology as political correctness that says that white people should hate their culture and that white people and Asians should be treated worse. It's denying an indigenous population the right to live in their homeland. Imagine if there was...
Talk about unprepared. This man is completely slurring his speech. He looks like he's about to have a seizure. Completely, he's sweating. Never seen anything like this. I mean, his argument is just... We don't even know what he's trying to say.
People took it a step further and said that Native Americans and black people should throw white people out of their homeland because of political correctness.
Wait, hold on. At first you said that Zionism denies the indigenous people the right to their homeland.
Because of the Holocaust.
But in the first thing you said, the Palestinian Arabs would be the indigenous people who now have the right to throw the occupying Jews out of what is the Palestinian Arabs' homeland.
I support a state.
Hold on one second. I'm trying to make some sense of what you're saying. I'm trying to just make some sense of the things you're saying. Because then the second part, you said, imagine if the Lakota Sioux, say, tried to throw the white Americans out of America because it was their indigenous homeland. But that is the argument you're advocating, actually, right? By opposing Zionism on indigenous grounds, that's the same argument.
What I'm saying is that people can do different things based on how oppressed they are. If white people did what the Jews did in 1948, they would be condemned by a long shot.
You're saying if white people went into some land that they hadn't been in a long time?
If white people went to a country and threw out a population, they would be
We've done that, haven't we?
That was.
I mean, we try to be nice to the people, but that's happened. Wars of conquest happen.
1948 was different than the 1600s.
How so?
Well, 1600s, it was okay to conquer other countries.
What changed about practical morality?
See, this is the problem. If you're going to say that, things changed, why did it change? What was it the UN that changed morality? No, either it's right or it's wrong. Whether or not it's 1640s or 1920, whatever, the actual act did not change, as he's trying to point out.
In the 1940s, there was the UN. It made clear that conquering other countries were not acceptable.
But how did that change the moral law? Just because the UN said so? So if I say so, can I change the moral law?
The only reason that people supported Israel was because of the Holocaust.
Okay, you keep speaking quickly and changing all the topics and interrupting.
No, my ideology
I'm trying to figure out what you're asking, because a lot of people have questions about Zionism and Israel. That was what our whole speech was about holy war, not just with the Jews and the Muslims, but with Christians as well.
My question My question is, as a conservative that believes that all people should be judged equally, why do you support Israel and condemn? And why do you support Israel when you're against political correctness and social justice?
Well, because I don't see why I shouldn't, as a practical matter, support Israel. You bring up the notion of Zionism, And Zionism has a religious aspect and a historical aspect. The historical aspect is exactly the kind of argument you're making about the Native American Indians, that because the Jews lived in this land a long time ago, they have a right to it now. But I don't really buy indigenous arguments. I don't buy it for the Lakota Sioux. I don't really buy it for anybody. However, I pointed out in my speech, if you were in favor of the Palestinian Arabs having a state, you probably wouldn't want to make the indigenous arguments, because Palestinian Arabs are not indigenous to the land by any stretch. They invaded in the 7th century and conquered many lands that were actually controlled by Christians. So that, I don't think that argument works. Then there's a religious argument to Zionism, which says that the Jews have a right from God to this land. And as a Christian, one's view of what is meant by Israel and what is meant by the Holy Land and the fulfillment of the old law and all the rest of it would impel a Christian not to totally agree with that point of view. So I'm not saying that I agree in principle with either of those arguments, but as a practical matter, it just seems to me that the state of Israel is doing pretty good stuff with the land. And so what I really care about from the perspective of the Holy Land is that the holy sites are protected, that Christians are permitted to go on pilgrimage there. And when I look at the alternative, which is a bunch of Palestinian Arabs who elected Hamas, and I look at the history of Christian-Muslim relations, which has basically been a 1,400-year unimpeded story of Muslims trying to invade all of Western Christendom and desecrate our churches and abuse our relics and so on and so forth, then I'm not really inclined to create yet another particularly radical Muslim nation, particularly with authority over the holy sites. So you can call it Zionism. I wouldn't call it Zionism. I just call it a kind of practical and prudential support for the state of Israel, given the alternative. And then you make this claim that political correctness is identical with Zionism. I mean, it just isn't. I don't know what to say. Zionism is a philosophy that came out of the 19th century that made all these claims about the Jews' rights to the Holy Land. Political correctness is a liberal ideology that emerges in the 20th century, which we now call wokeness or whatever, which has all sorts of influences from the Western Marxist tradition to the, the deconstructionists and the post-structuralists and all sorts of kind of postmodern academic theories. And it's nasty and silly and wrong, but I don't really see the connection between the two things. And just as a practical matter, I'm yet to be convinced that handing over the Holy Sepulchre to a bunch of fanatical Islamists would be a good idea. I don't think it was a good idea in the 11th century or the 12th century or the 13th century, and I don't think that it's a good idea in the 21st.
Great job by Michael Knowles breaking it down. But I would say the initial problem here is that the idea that the Jews stole the land. The Jews did not steal the land. It has nothing to do with history that they should get it back. Look at 1948 partition plan. That was the UN that agreed to split up the land. Half the Palestinians, half a Jewish state. Now, the Jews agreed. The Palestinians did not. The Palestinians attacked. The Arab nations attacked. In 1948, they launched a war, the Israel's war for independence. Israel won, which was an incredible miracle, by the way, and then essentially took the land. So you attack someone, you lose the war, you lose the land, and that happens all over the place. So that's really why Israel should exist. You could have had a state. Instead, you attacked us. You lost. You lose. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can subscribe to our memberships on this channel as well. Really looking to grow that so we can get you some more exclusive content.